Welcome back to another episode of The Jaily Show. With The Jaily Show, we sit down every week with different people across LinkedIn and business and the whole world and talk about what's going on with them. This week, we have the awesome guest, someone I've been speaking to for quite a long time. We'll get into that. But finally got the good sir on the show. How are you, David?
I'm very well. I'm very well indeed. And I have to say, somebody who can out-enthusiasm me. They say the drugs don't work, but Jay, they obviously do, because we can see them in full flow with you now.
Whatever they put in this gorgeous silver can is far too strong for me. That much is for sure.
Oh, it's great to be here. Thank you very much. It's a bit weird. I'm seeing myself 4 times here, so I'll just focus in on you.
Oh, darling, thank you so much. So for those out there who don't know who you are, David, give us a little intro into your good self.
I'm an online business coach. Didn't expect to be an online business coach. I started off being just a podcaster. No, actually, Before that, I was a web developer. Really? And then I decided I hated making websites. It was all right as a hobby, but actually doing it constant drove me mental. I listened to 3 podcasts back to back one afternoon, and then suddenly I thought, I reckon I could do this. I could be a podcaster. So back in 2013, I launched my show when there was only about 4 podcasts around. And I think it was me, Ricky Gervais, and a couple of Americans. And I've been doing it ever since. And since then, due to the beauty of podcasting, you can then say author, business coach, and whatever comes your way.
and when you got into it, right? Because I think 7 years ago, the podcasting there weren't proper podcasting platforms. You had to be relatively techie to just get it to the world. But did you have much background in audio at all?
No, not at all. The only thing that I had was I was a training and development guy. So I was used to standing up, doing presentations. Right. And so I was used to talking. And so there's a different sort of nuance with being a voice talker and a presenter talker, where that was all body language. And so if I listened back to some of my first ones, they weren't bad, but they were a bit flat. Right. And then you realize that actually you've got to perk it up. And I was lucky. I spoke to an American DJ who had that classic, welcome to the WFDC kind of voice, And he said, you've got to do 75% bigger on radio to just sound normal. So I started working on that. So no, there wasn't any technical issues. There was more internal issues. It was the case of actually buying into it and becoming hopefully as good as possible. And in fact, I'm still going now, where so many people have dropped the bat. It says, well, it must be my thing.
Are you still running the same show that you started 7 years ago?
Unfortunately, yes. Yeah, it's
amazing. That's amazing.
I was going 7 days a week at the beginning, and I did 365-hour plus shows in the first year. And then the second year, I was thinking of speeding it up.
Well, of course.
I was thinking of doing a morning and an evening show, like a radio show.
Wow.
And because I had no problem doing content, I can just do it, bang, 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 bang. And so I wrote out to my audience and said, what do you want from Join Up Dots for the second year? And they said, less of it. And I went, what? I thought you wanted more. And I didn't realize, I thought with podcasts, people would just listen to an episode and 3 weeks later might listen to another one. But these people were like obsessed. And they were like listening to try an hour show. And then the next day there was another hour show, and the next day. And so they said 3 times a week. So I slipped back to 3 times a week. And it's been a breeze since then, because I only have to podcast 2 days a month. The whole thing is done.
I love the fact that you were thinking of going to 10 hours a week.
Yeah, but once you do it, and this is one of the things that I always say to people, you do not polish the recording, you polish yourself.
Right.
And so once you get to the point where you've got no editing, and I do everything live, and so all the sound clips are done live, all the motivational speeches, I don't say ums and ahs very much, all the kind of training, you basically, my post-production is about 19 seconds, where literally it's done. I click a button, bang, it's done, and then I move on to the next one. So I do, on a Thursday at the end of the month, I do about 10 interviews back to back, which is about 10 hours. And then the next day I do about 9 of my own solo shows.
Right.
And then that's me done for the month.
Amazing.
And so people say to me, "Oh, do you love podcasting?" And I go, "I love podcasting, but I don't want to be doing it all the time." You know, where some people every night they have to do a show, and every Tuesday, and I think, "Oh, this is dreadful." No, so I just do 2 days a week, 2 days a month, and then that's it, bashed out.
Well, that's great as well, because you can get yourself in the right headspace. You can loosen your tongue. And people, I did a podcast with someone for the first time yesterday, who's at their first show, and as it finished, they said to me, the first thing they said to me was like, that's harder than it looks, because it's not only, unlike a traditional interview where, you know, we used to watch Parkinson back in the day. He asks a question, he fields it. Once they finish that answer, he asks a different question, and that's kind of goes. Whereas a podcast, it's a discussion, but it's also an entertainment discussion, which is a strange thing.
Yeah, you've got to do it right. You know, I used to stand up for 8 hours a day and do presentations. So I was used to talking. But mentally being on your game where you're listening to everything, and you're not just listening, you're listening to what they haven't said so that you can ask the good questions. Otherwise,
to continue what they're saying. Exactly.
And it's made me a better husband. My wife has actually said, "You're so much better at listening now because you train yourself to do that." But it's mentally exhausting. You know, it's like having an job interview 10 times a day, just
exactly.
one after another.
And worse yet, not even at least with the job interview, you can see if it's going terribly. You know, you can see if one guy's falling asleep and this gal's playing on the phone and this person's like, but with a podcast, it's going out there. You don't necessarily know if it's not hitting the audience.
You know, if it's hitting you though, and that's the key thing.
True.
You know, when you're doing it and you feel a bit flat, you've got to go, right, raise your game. And 2 things that I've realized from podcasting, I've done about 2,000 episodes. Wow. If somebody says to me, "I'm an amusing guy," they're not. That's one of the things. You know that they're going to be the most boring person, because nobody who's funny ever says they're funny.
Right.
They just know that you will find them funny. And so if somebody comes through to me and says, "Yes, I'm an amusing and engaging guy," basically it's deleted. That's not going to come through to my show. And the other thing is, anybody who's got a book, you've got to keep them off the book. You know,
right.
Because otherwise it's in chapter 13 of my book.
Oh man, because they lived it. They lived it for 2-3 years or whatever, 6 months while they were writing it. They could go deep on every single.
They can go deep on it. So I love it. At the end, they go, "Oh, we didn't talk about my book at all." And I think, no, damn well we didn't. You know, but we do mention the book because it's why they're there. You know, and so there's certain things that you have to train yourself to realize, and then once you get that, you're totally in control.
I think you're so right about it making you better conversationalists, like your wife's saying. You're better at listening now because you train yourself to really care and not just listen to do the listening noises. Yes, sure. But to listen to the flow of the conversation and allow yourself to be open to, not like when David finishes, I will ask him about his company and his coaching. Instead, I'm like, he just said that. That's pretty cool. What about? So, and I think that's why it's so exhausting, because your mind is firing in the 11 different ways that it could go. And it's the same as a conversation, but it's got quite obvious microscope on it.
Yeah, you know, you get some people that say to me, "David, will you come on?" Because this is rare. I don't generally do other people's shows at all. So I really say no to everything. But if I do, sometimes they say, "I'll send you a list of the questions." And I think, why? You know, can you imagine on a first date, you go in and you say to the woman, "I'll get a drink. These are the questions I'm going to ask you when I sit down." She'd be off. She'd be running. And so how do I think that's going to work? And I have had it where I've literally read through. And so I literally, I say no to every single thing, you know, unless it's somebody who's just started.
That's nice.
If somebody has just started, I'm quite happy to be the first guest. Hopefully that I can be Dumbo's magic feather.
Yeah, give them a little bump.
A fly, and they can get some of my traffic and give them. But other than that, it's a no. So Jay, I must be in love with you to do this.
Mr. Ralph, stop it.
Right, much left.
We've officially swiped left on this podcast.
Yes.
I got to admit, last week or the week before, I went on to a new show, a show called Immigrant Mentality, and it was so cool. It was someone who's just started out in podcasting, actually doing a podcast production business, but it was just so cool because those first few shows, I know what it's like. I've helped so many podcasts launch. Like, I know those first few shows, no matter how calm you look, you're a swan and you are panicking desperately underneath it. But it's just great to be part of that. There's a certain energy that's really exciting.
It is. And then you find that they get a bit flat. And I think they start to query why they started it in the first place. Because it is a vocation before anything. And people always say to me, you know, oh, I'm a podcast host. And I actually say to them, no, you're not. You're doing a podcast, but you're not hosting a podcast. And that's when the confidence comes in, that you are blending, as you said, the entertainment and the information, and you are driving that. And the real good people out there, the Joe Rogans, you know, the people who are huge audiences, they understand that. They understand that they are the host, not just to say, I'm a podcast host. And when I started, nobody was a podcast host. I used to have to say to people, I'm a podcaster. And they'd go, what's that? Oh, it's like the radio and it's online. Oh, can I listen to it? And I always used to think, well, it's on the internet. Are you blacklisted from the internet? Otherwise, and people still say that to me. Oh, can I listen to it? No, you can't.
No. But ask your friend Bobby; he might be able to.
You're a window cleaner, and we don't allow window cleaners to listen to it. But but they never understood it at all. So it has moved on that people at least understand what podcast is.
I've seen that so much in the last 2 to 3 years. It's hard for me to necessarily say when, because I live in podcasting so much. I have that conversation an awful lot. But I'm just starting to less and less, as you say, be like, well, you know, internet radio, that, but really good. Because internet radio wasn't so good, but it's lovely to see it. I think when we first met was at a podcast meetup in like 5 or 6 years ago, in London somewhere, and it was a real small event. Either it was there or they were talking about you constantly because you.
Well, I wasn't there. I've never been to a conference in my life.
We never went to one more. I went. It was like, cool. So no one knows what they're doing, and everyone's just hoping. So it must have been off the back of that when they were singing your praises. And it was such a strange community, like because it's that kind of techie, audio-y back then. Because now it's great, right? Now there's Libsyn and all the other hosting platforms. It's pretty easy to get a show live. It's still it takes a little thinking, but it's something that I could do as opposed to my business partner who originally put a mic in front of me. But the community was really weird. You'd have one guy who was super cool wearing a fedora, and everyone else was like, "Okay, I get it. Tech guy."
Yeah. I was asked to be on a round table in America somewhere, and I thought to myself, "Oh, I'm in America. Then I can just whiz down there. It'd be quite interesting to meet people." And then they sent me the layout of the discussion, and I don't mean to sound arrogant. I'm not interested. I'm not interested in how podcasting as an industry is growing. I'm not interested in anything. I'm interested in trying to do the best that I can do on my microphone. And so I said to him, look, I think I'm the wrong person for this. And he said, yeah, but because of your profile and because of how long you've been doing, you've got great insights. And I said, I don't think I have. I just focus on what I have to do, and I'm not interested in the double dangle wangle that makes it go off in this direction and that direction. And I don't care.
No.
If you look at my setup, it's unbelievably simple, and people actually say to me, I had there was a guy who was a Global Heart Radio. And Global Heart Radio got rid of all their DJs, and they sort of centralized it in the United Kingdom. And he came round for the afternoon to see about podcasting. And it was quite obvious that he thought he was going to do his radio show where everybody does everything for him. And I was saying to him, no, you've got to have a reason to do it. You've got to have content, you know. And so he was a bit frightened by it. But he was blown away by the simplicity of my setup. Bear in mind the audio, the quality of the audio and all that kind of stuff. And so that's what I mean. When you go and people go, oh, are you using the Logitech A24 microphone? I think, I don't know. I really don't know. My microphone, for example, I've got a sock over it.
Nice.
Just to dampen the S's and the pluses, you know?
Love it.
It's very simple stuff. Just ram it on there, get your podcast out, and then live it. But don't live it too much.
And I think so many people get lost in that. And I think that's why shows end up sort of suddenly dying out, is that people get into it. And it's really, it's any kind of content creation that you're doing on a regular basis, excuse me, is it's really addictive. Like, it's especially if you like to get better at things. There's a
Yes.
real steep learning curve that I found with podcasting and interviewing and having that conversation, where the first 5 or 10 you're finding your feet, and then all of a sudden you get a real nice groove. But people get, and you're absolutely right, it's the people who call themselves podcast hosts long before they really are.
Yes.
That tend to like, just, they're living the life. You know, they think they're Rogan already, and it's like, it took him a decade.
Yeah.
And even then it was 5 years that it got great.
You know, I've been doing it 7 years now, and I listened back to every show. I listened to 2 podcasts. I listened to mine, and I listened to Desert Island Discs on Radio 4. And that's the only 2 podcasts I listen to. And people say to me, why you listen to your own? You know, why? And I go, because you have to learn the nuances. You have to learn the beats. You know, in the early days, I used to do double questions. Okay. Where I would ask a question and then meander and ask another question, and then the guest wasn't sure what part of the question I was answering. And it's those kind of things that you have to listen back to yourself and think, no, I need a precise answer. And so every time somebody says to me, what do you mean by that? I think, oh, God, I've missed out. You know, it's got to be bang on to keep that flow going.
That's so interesting. And that's something which I've always known from sales. Like, ask one question, get one answer. Ask 4 questions, get one answer. Like, you know, people just don't necessarily give them. But such an interesting point that it's, when interviewing someone, if you give too much space, especially because as soon as it's lights and a camera and a microphone's in front of people, a lot of people go, Geek. You know, the most confident people in the world, I've just seen people like, oh, hello, David. Nice to meet you this evening. But when you give them just one, here's your layup shot, boom, take it. Like, you know, you don't want to be like, you know, here's a choice while you're thinking. Don't say don't say
It's like telling somebody to walk across your garden. And they would just walk across your garden naturally until we're all looking at them. And then they feel funny when they're walking, you know, and they're aware of their steps and stuff. And that's the difference with a podcast. As soon as they realize, that's why I don't do this. I don't have video. It's always dark, because I like the fact that they never get to see me. I never get to see them. You know, I've done 2,000 shows. I've never turned my webcam on once.
Nice.
And I like that because it's almost intimate. They feel more connected. They're in a dark room watching their own pornography, you know, and they get away with it.
I love that. I really like that.
And I think as soon as you look at their eyes, you touched into something that you don't want to know. You know what I mean?
I do, because it's like a great conversation. You know, you can sit on the phone when you're just talking to someone for an awful long time, but also it prompts the other person to have to respond audio-wise, as opposed to being like, and lots of hand movements, or, you know, when I pull up this, well, that's no good for my audio podcast. Don't talk about this, talk about the thing you have in your hand. I'm actually really guilty of it on this show. I will do tons of stuff where I'm just having fun with someone, talking to them, waving hands, and like, you know, I'll talk about a phone and I'll just have it in the air. And then it's like, oh, right, that's an iPhone. Because I haven't really thought of it, you know?
Yeah, because it's quite weird, these kind of things. I don't know if you have the same issue. Should I be looking at you, or should I be looking directly through the webcam? Yeah. And because I end up looking at you because it's a conversation, and then I think to myself, oh, I should be looking directly at the webcam, but then I can't keep your face. It's very strange. And why we have to have ourselves on here,
who knows?
Get rid of ourselves, because all we do is spend our times looking at ourselves, and nobody likes it. We always look at it and think, oh God, I look like my dad. No, actually, I look like my granddad. You know, just have the person in front. That's all we need.
I look like my granddad. You know, there was that app going around where it aged everyone, the age face or something. There was, and it was wonderful, right? So it took a picture you put in and put just, you know, wherever you are, put bigger lines in, made the hair grey. I took a picture and put it through this app, and I was the spitting image of my granddad, like dangerously so. Like, send it to my mum, and she was like, "Is that the fucking girl?" I was like, "No, it's me." So freaky. I actually hate seeing myself as well, especially because I'm so handsy, and that freaks me out. So right now I have things over the screen, so it's only your good self. And what I actually do to solve that whole looking in the camera problem is I move the person behind me, right behind the camera. So eyes and nose, basically, that I'm looking at now, so we get to have a chat, and I'm not like, yes.
Because I don't actually have a phone. I don't have a phone. I have no landline phone. I have no mobile phone. I have no tablet. I have nothing. And so when people say to me about filters and stuff, I really don't know. I really am Tom Hanks with a baseball on an island of my own, talking to Wilson every morning. And I've got no idea. And once again, people say to me, don't you need that for business? And I go, no, it's just added noise. Yeah. It's just added noise. Don't you need it for your podcast? No.
Very much no.
Yeah. Terry Wogan was a legend of broadcasting in the United Kingdom. Oh, it's Terry. And he didn't go on phones and broadcast live and do that. He just did his radio show and we listened, and that was it. So I think there's an awful lot of noise that's added onto it, which loses the core message of what you're actually doing.
Yeah, and taking that away, loves it. So you mentioned Desert Island Discs earlier, one of the podcasts you listen to.
The only one, other than mine.
Other than that other great show you listen to.
Yeah.
So I've got to do it. I'm sure you thought about it 50 times. We're going to go 3, so we don't run too long. Okay. What are your 3 Desert Island Discs?
Oh, right. Okay, that's very good. I think I would have to have Happy Talk by Captain Sensible.
Really? Okay, cool.
When something is so bad, it's good. Happy talking, happy talk. I think I would wake up quite happy with that every morning. Okay. I think I would have to have Hey Jude by the Beatles, which is a classic song of my kids go, it's so long. And I go, but it doesn't feel that long.
No, and it goes through so many different places during that song.
Yeah, it's like if you listen to Bohemian Rhapsody, it's like 6 minutes, but every bit's perfect, and you go, what a perfect song. And then I think the last one I would have is Together Forever by Rick Astley, which was mine and my wife's wedding song.
Ah, beautiful. Well, that's a top 3. Love that.
I would have that, but Happy Talk also because my wife hates it. And do you ever play music on Alexa and stuff just because you know that your wife hates it?
Most of the time, yeah.
I do. I'm actually creating a playlist at the moment of songs that have got the word groovy in it because my kids hate groovy, and I think groovy is a word that should be brought back into the vocabulary.
I say it all the time. I had someone the other day send me a message on LinkedIn and said, do you watch Austin Powers a lot? Oh, man. Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think he speaks cool. I think everything's groovy and awesome.
Groovy should come back. It means something, with that one word.
So we've got a playlist in the office because we've got one of our editors is called Toby, but we always call him Mr. Tubbs. Well, Tubbs can half replace love really easily. So we've got a whole playlist, which is like Tubbs in an elevator, Tubbs on the rocks, no ice, like anything with love.
Did you go with tub thumping? Did you go for the obvious? I get knocked down and I get back up again. Yeah, you could have that one.
Absolutely brilliant. So when I think first I started following you and such, it was all podcast. It was podcast. But things have evolved since then. And why or how did that happen?
But it's funny actually because I was thinking about when we first connected, and I don't connect with anyone, as I say, but I connected with you on LinkedIn, and I remembered. Why did I connect with him? And I remembered I was going through such a dark phase in my life, and you were so positive and personable and English as well that I sort of connected with you. And I remember sort of saying things like, do you ever feel like smashing up your business? Do you ever feel like sort of running away from it? Because I did everything wrong. And basically what I did was I followed people's advice of be everywhere. And I was spending more time making stupid little Facebook images and Instagram posts and all that kind of stuff than I was podcasting. And it drove me into almost an early grave. And I had acute burnout, which is my burnout past burnout. And it almost killed me. And I had cholesterol, blood pressure. I was boiling from the inside. And if anybody that comes along to me and goes, yeah, I almost operate on burnout all the time, I really want to just smack them in the balls because they don't want to go there, because 4 years down the line, I'm still trying to get over it. Wow. So subsequently, from that point, I had to step away from everything in my business to try to reclaim my energy and my power.
And find your new line. If you've crossed that line an awful lot, then you got to draw another line in the sand, which is more acceptable, right?
So I thought, all I'm going to do is podcast. I'm going to let everything float. And what I realized was I was podcasting and nothing made any difference. The fact that I wasn't on Facebook, I wasn't on LinkedIn, it made not a blind bit of difference to my success. So I thought, right, this is interesting. Okay, so all you've got to do is more of what you're best at, instead of doing loads of things that you're not very good at, and it's kind of crap. So when I looked over at Instagram, a lot of it was just crap stuff because I didn't really know what to post on there. Some people are brilliant at it, and I wasn't. Other people on LinkedIn are great at it. I wasn't. I say I'm good at podcasting. It's what I can do really easily. And so once I got a clear deck, I started to think to myself, this is interesting. 95% of what we do online isn't required. And I started going deeper. And then David Attenborough, yes, the man himself, came into my life. And this is a weird analogy. Hopefully I'm not sort of like taking you off into dark corners where you'll have to have a shower afterwards. But David Attenborough was talking about overfishing.
Okay.
And he was talking about some river or something, and it had been overfished. And the fishermen used to be able to just put a rod in and bring out a fish really easily. And then they didn't. And what they found out was fish have hot spots.
Yeah.
And so the fish go there and they swim around and they breed and they have fish orgies or whatever they do. And then if you protect the hot spots, then the rest of the seas are plentiful fish.
Ooh,
because the breeding part comes out, right?
Yeah.
So I was watching this, and I had a foot in a bucket of water because I had gout for about 3 weeks, and I couldn't walk, and I was in pain. So I was watching a lot of these documentaries, and I thought to myself, that's interesting, isn't it? Fish have hotspots. Why do customers not have hotspots? I bet they have hotspots. I bet customers come to a place, and if you dip your rod where the customers are, you don't have to do anything else. You will just be able to get the customer to come out. And so I started thinking about this. I'm just playing it around in my head, thinking, where's the customer's hotspot? Then I started thinking about, what are customers doing? If a customer asks you how to peel an apple, most people will tell them how to peel an apple.
Yes.
But actually, if you start thinking, why are they asking how to peel an apple? What are they actually getting? You're then getting the backstory. Now, once I realized that, and every time I do like keyword research, every time I do something, I ask why that person's typing that in the first place, you start to get the buying intent of what that person's doing.
Sure.
And I thought, well, I probably was about the millionth person that thought this.
Sure.
At this time, I thought to myself, oh my God, I've had this epiphany, and I'm like online Jesus or something. Be able to walk people to that path. And so that's what I started doing. I started changing my podcast to only providing content that I know people are already looking for. Okay. And so I don't just create a stupid title like people do. I go over onto the internet, I do some keyword research, I find it, I then find out what the traffic is, I then look at what the winnable traffic of it is, and then if I can win it, I create a podcast episode based on that.
Nice.
Now, on iTunes and the directories, along that same line, I realized that it's a search engine as well. So if somebody comes along and launches a podcast, generally they will go episode 1, motivation with Jay on a Friday morning or something like that.
Great show.
Now, if you think about the keywords, no one's typing in episode 1. They're typing in motivation with Jay, blah, 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 blah.
Sure.
Get rid of episode 1. And then I started getting to the point of just putting in motivation and just having the shortest business, addiction. And then if somebody has got a podcast where it is addiction times 20, I'm going to beat them to the top of the ranks.
Sure.
And so all the inner markets of iTunes suddenly exploded in front of me. And I realized I could actually find the traffic by just going, right, I'm going to put my show there. And I'd be at the top.
So essentially finding those hotspots and just only focusing on the hotspots. Why kill yourself being everywhere all the time and trying to fish the whole river when you can go to where the fish are or go to where your clients are?
Keep your eyes closed to the fish orgy and just put that's a horrible image. And I'm
a fisherman. That's an awesome image. I love that.
It's the eel. It's the eel that's going to love it more than anyone. But and you just look at it strategically and think, okay, where's the hotspot? and put it there. And once I did that, honestly, my business just exploded. But my work rate went down 95%. I don't work Saturdays. I don't work Sundays. I don't work Mondays. I don't work Tuesdays. Generally, Wednesdays, I don't work. Thursday, I don't work. Friday, I do my coaching.
Yeah.
And Sunday evening, I do coaching for America.
Nice.
And that's it. And so I just can take 6 or 7 weeks off at time, go off on holiday, just turn off my computer, come back. I don't have to check emails. It's the hotspots.
And I'm guessing that, well, and I'm taking a leap here, was that a response to acute burnout? Were you working 5, 6, 7 days a week beforehand? And
I was obsessed. I was obsessed with being everywhere, trying to grow the biggest show I possibly could, and there was a time I was getting about 500,000 listeners a month. Now, I don't give a monkeys. I really don't. Because out of those 500,000, who's putting money in my bank account? Not many of them.
Right.
So I just got to find the hot ones out of that. And so I stopped promoting. As I say, I don't do anything other than what Libsyn will do naturally. And so you don't see me anywhere. But I know that when I produce content, somebody out there's already looking for it, and that content's solving someone's problem. And then they just reach out to me. And then I speak to them. And so this is another thing, which is a bit sort of, I got rid of all email marketing because I thought it was boring.
So it's definitely as dead as disco. I have never, but 5 years next month that we've been running this business, I have never purchased anything ever from a marketing email.
No.
I buy stuff for this company all day long. My business partner does as well. Now, an email from someone I've purchased from, maybe occasionally if it's a great deal, but cold email, never. Never. It's dead.
No. And you see, you get 1, 2, 3, make a pitch. Well, and it's a drip feed. So all I do is say to my listeners, if you want to speak to me one-to-one, I'll give you half hour, and then we'll talk about your issues, and then be gone. And if you want to go, you go. But there's enough fish out there to make a living. And then that suddenly became my business coaching, because I started talking about it, and people started coming through, quite high level people as well, saying, David, you've got a real simple approach here. How do we do it? And so once you start quoting prices at them and they say yes, you then next time you quote more and they say yes, and the next time you quote more. You know what I mean? And until they stop saying yes, and then you come back down again.
Right, yeah.
That thing, and then you realise that actually you don't need that many customers a year. You just need the right customers that are willing to pay you for the value. But I couldn't see that at the beginning, and I went through the mire to the point where my body gave up on me.
Which is horrendous. It's just as scary as it gets, especially because I posted out actually today onto LinkedIn, just saying how. So in March we lost an awful lot of business, because a lot of our business, or a lot of the business we lost, was on-site shoots. Obviously, they're all gone. Yeah. I don't hold no ill will to everyone who cancelled their POs. I would have done as well.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden we got like this great big £1,000 a hole, and thankfully, because of what we do with, podcasting and video and such, we're actually able to fill that over the last few months, over the next few months that went on. I never really got out of my head, though. It was such a shock, and the world was in such a bad place, and there was such uncertainty. I didn't really get out of my head. And only this last month, when we've got back to the office and I've remembered what that routine thing is, I'm not sat all night just staring at my phone. Like, I had to actually make time over those months to be like, cool, I'm eating. I'm going to turn my phone off and put it next to me so I can engage with my wife. Yeah. Because otherwise I'd be like, lovely, love it. And those are the people I hate at restaurants. When I look over, I want to go over and be like, dude, you're out with her, or lady, you're out with him. Talk to each other. Like,
you see mums pushing prams, and they're instead of saying to the baby, oh, look at that car, look at that tree, they're just looking at the phones, and the baby's just sitting there, and then baby becomes 2 years old and they're on a tablet, and it's an ongoing thing.
And they're being taught the priority the whole time. So that thing's the priority, and then me.
Okay. Yeah, because lockdown, I loved lockdown. Fortunately, really? Fortunately we had good weather, which was brilliant. True. But lockdown, I feel sorry for people that financially got into difficulties.
Of course.
I would say to a lot of them, don't just think that it's not going to happen again. Start taking control. Absolutely. And start thinking of how can you create income in stuff. Just little things. I've done little things, and it annoys my wife because she says, "Why are you doing this?" And I sort of say, "Because I want to." End of story. But I got rid of my car.
Right.
Got rid of my car because I was looking at it thinking, I work from home most of the time. Why do we have 2 cars? I don't need it. So I bought a bike.
Nice.
And I've been cycling along like a 10-year-old, looking around and stuff. And even when it's pouring with rain, it's lovely. But then I've got 2 parking spaces on my driveway and I can charge out 100 quid for each of those. So I make 200 quid a month just for a driving space. And it's all those kind of little things that I think the more you find income and value away from your job, the less pressure you're under.
Absolutely.
And the next time lockdown happens, if it does, you'll say, well, that's no issue because I just do this and I do that. You know, it's that kind of just be creative.
And when you take that pressure off your job, here's the real shocker, get better at your job.
Yeah.
As you're saying there, you've managed to squeeze down what you were doing in 7 days a week, and how many downloads today, how many subscribers today, how many downloads? Oh, not enough. Release another show. I'm going 2 a day. And you've now managed to break that into a couple of days a week. Rest of the time, you get to live that life thing that I hear so not much about. But actually, you know, obviously, you've managed to make those days efficient enough to do the job, so you're much better at it than you were when you were killing yourself 5 days or 7 days a week. And obviously, you know, I get from what you're saying, you were doing a lot more then, but you've cut out the chaff, gotten rid of the stuff, which is
doing the wrong things. And there's 3 things. There's the 80-20 principle, which is basically the hot spots that we're talking about. Find those. There's Parkinson's law. Do you know Parkinson's law?
No.
Parkinson's law is a fundamental law that given the amount of time, the job will always expand into that amount of time. And so if you give yourself 3 hours to do a podcast, it's going to take 3 hours. And if you give yourself 30 minutes, the quality is still as good, but you just give yourself 30 minutes, boom. So one of the things I do, I set a timer using Alexa, and I say, Alexa, 30 minutes timer. Is that in the morning or the afternoon? Just now. Just do it now. I start working, and I don't look around at anything. And then 30 minutes finishes. I go, right, that's got to be finished. And then I go off and pop around the garden and sit there and stuff, you know. And then I'll come back and do it again. But at the end of the day, that work has to be done because it's not spreading into the next day. It's not spreading into it. Even though I've got those 3 days, it has to occur on that day. And if I'm a bit tight, I'm going to work later because it's going to get done on that day.
Yeah, I love that because you're not always playing catch up, and also you have to be efficient. You have to get it done in half an hour. I mean, there's no messing around. Because like you say, if you had 3 hours to do it, you would still get that half an hour done, but it would take the full 3 hours, and the last few minutes you'd be like, and done.
If you were a kid, summer holidays, homework, you always did it in the evening before you went back. Yeah. So it took 6 weeks. And actually, it only took like 15 minutes to do it, but you just left it, didn't you? Left it.
It did indeed. Well, look, David, I honestly reckon that you and I could do another couple of hours because this is one of the funnest chats I've had. But we also have a timer, and we try and keep these under 40 minutes, basically. I know, I hear you. We'll do something again, but we try and keep it short because it's LinkedIn specifically, and just give people a chance to do it. So, and I'm sure they have, people have listened to you today and they want to come find you, where do they find you, sir?
Join Up Dots. Just go over to Google. It's a good place for finding things. And just type in Join Up Dots. And that's me. And you can book some time and we'll just chat and talk about stuff or whatever. But that's the best way.
Well, look, I've just managed to have that chat and it was awesome. I suggest you guys too. David, thank you so much for joining me, sir.
It's a pleasure. Look after yourself.
You too. Take it easy.